In this video, we'll give you the top waiver wire players to target going into week 16, along with our top reactions to week 15. I'm Jim Coventry, joined by Anthony Cervino, and we are with RotoWire. Anthony, waivers, Aaron Rodgers, look, multiple touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 games. We'll talk about him later in the show, his team, but he's been like the second half maniac in the last month. First half, they do like nothing, but he has consecutive games now with 289 passing yards. Look, one matchup easy, I really don't care. He looks to be in line for a strong finish to the season.
Yeah, if Aaron Rodgers is on waivers and you need a quarterback with so much quarterback variance right now, he has to be rostered. I really think that it did take him a good half a season to get fully healthy off the Achilles. He had Devontae, even though they've had that long rapport, it took them a few games to get going. This looks like an Aaron Rodgers who next year should be playing quarterback in the NFL. So rest of season, you get the Rams and Buffalo the next 2 weeks in the fantasy playoffs. I think he's a startable quarterback.
Oh, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. Cooper Rush, Dallas Cowboys, 2 touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 games. Doesn't have a real high ceiling, but he's been developing a nice, reliable scoring floor. Thoughts on Cooper Rush?
Yeah, Rush is playing better than I thought he would. Because if you remember, a few years ago when Dak was out, that Cowboys team was winning with defense, and Rush was a game manager. Now Rush is being asked to do more. He's not lighting it up, but he's had 3 of 5 games with over 20 quarterback points before you play. He's not really turning the ball over a ton. And again, he's doing the best with his situation. So I don't mind him, especially this week. Tampa Bay, the second easiest matchup on paper for quarterbacks.
Mason Rudolph, Tennessee Titans next. And I want to point this out. Will Levis completed an impressive 11 of 12 passes yesterday. But 3 of those passes were to the other team. So 3 interceptions later, and Mason Rudolph comes on. And Rudolph throws a pair of touchdown passes. Look, I can't see them going back to Levis, but I'm not in the house, and they invested obviously a significant draft pick in him. But if Mason Rudolph's started down the stretch in a 2-quarterback league, you could do worse.
Yeah, you could. The schedule's okay. Indy and Jacksonville, your next 2 games. But I think they have to go back to Will Levis because they're not going anywhere. You really need to see, is there anything here with Levis? I don't think there is, but you at least got to give him 2 more games because you did invest a higher pick in him.
I mean, so come on, we got to get that. We got to get that interception total up higher. We got to push that thing to the ceiling, man. Morning, Randy. I see you're in the house here. Thanks for joining us. Just having fun with that, guys. Carson Wentz is next. Maybe Patrick Mahomes misses time. They'd be smart to sit him. High ankle sprain. They're waiting to get Marquise Brown back still. DJ Humphries, left tackle. He had a hamstring. He probably need a little more time to get back. They have a 2-game lead, but really a 1-game lead on the Bills because of the tiebreaker. They can afford to lose a game. If Wentz is out there, who knows? They still may be able to win anyway. See how that all shakes out. But if Mahomes isn't starting, Wentz is a 2-quarterback league option. I'd only start him if your other quarterback was injured. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't mind Wentz at all. Remember, I think it was last season, he played a game for the Rams, week 18. He scored almost 30 fantasy points against the 49ers. I get for the 49ers, the game was meaningless. But Wentz ran the ball 17 for 56 in a touchdown.
Yep. You're right. He can run.
Again, he can do it, and Reed knows this. So if you need to use Wentz in a 2-quarterback league, I don't hate it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Let's go to running back. Look, Jerome Ford's probably the lead back now for the Browns. Nick Chubb broke his foot. I put Ford in the top 24 equation right away. Pierre Strong will be involved. They might elevate Deontay Foreman, but I think Ford has to get 14 to 17 touches in almost every game, Anthony.
Yeah, Jerome Ford back in the seat as the RB1 here. It's unfortunate what happened to Nick Chubb, but Chubb has not looked like himself. And Jerome Ford, only 9 touches, 104 total yards, and a touchdown. Didn't really play a lot of snaps when he got all that done against a tough Kansas City defense. Cincinnati, Miami, these next 2 games are smash matchups, and I think Ford is in the RB2 conversation.
Yeah, now that touchdown was in garbage time, and they were expecting him to throw every down, and they just ran a little inside draw, and all of a sudden he bounced to the outside, and 62 yards later he's in the end zone. Kansas City was stunned, but still, it counts. But nonetheless, if you look at the yardage totals, we know he's a good player. But again, this offense hasn't blocked him. But like you said, Anthony, he's somebody you got to have. If he's on the waiver wire and he was dropped, you got to add him. Another player who might have been dropped because he was terrible for much of the season is Travis Etienne. In shallow leagues, if he was dropped, he has 70 and 85 scrimmage yards in the last 2 games. His snaps went over 70% last week. He rarely sees that. It's possible he's been catching the ball. Maybe they're going to give him more work down the stretch. He can overcome that poor offensive line, Anthony.
Yeah, in the past 2 games, 9 total targets, 8 receptions, 70 total yards. That's just as a receiver, which is providing that high PPR point floor of double-digit PPR points in these 2 games. But last week against the Jets, he did run the ball 14 times for 65 yards. So he had 85 total yards, one of his better showings of the year. And he closes the year with Vegas and Tennessee at the fantasy playoffs. So Travis Etienne, there's not many guys out there that have a ceiling, because we know if Travis Etienne gets going, there is some ceiling built in, and maybe it happens this week.
Kendre Miller, New Orleans Saints, is next. He didn't see much work at all, but then Alvin Kamara left the game with a groin injury, and it was the Kendre Miller show late in that game. He goes 9 rushes for 46 yards. He looked like the explosive player we were touting in the preseason, but again, the injuries for Miller, Dennis Allen, the former coach, put him in the doghouse. Well, if Kamara misses time, and remember, he's a 30-year-old running back now with a groin injury, it's possible he misses time early in the week, too early to tell. But if he misses time, I think Miller is a minimum of a flex, but he's probably somewhere in the top 20 to 24 range at running back.
Yeah, it would be smart for the Saints to feature him if they shut down Kamara or he misses a game or 2. Jamal Williams, we know what he is. We've seen Mims a little bit earlier, but Kendre, we really don't know much of. He averaged 5.1 yards per carry yesterday. In the past 2 games, a total of 19 carries, just over 78 yards and a touchdown. We both like Kendre Miller coming into the year before all the injuries. This could be a shot for everybody to see that, hey, maybe Kendre Miller going into next year starts eating into Kamara's workload.
This one will sound funny when I first say it, but there's some legs to it. DJ Dallas of the Arizona Cardinals. Trey Benson leaves the game with an ankle injury. Saturday, Damari Mercado was placed on the injured reserve. It may just be an automatic that DJ Dallas becomes the number 2. And in this game against New England, he did have 4 carries for 15 yards. Again, that was a Benson playing into the second half. So DeMercado gone. Dallas could see some work because they don't give James Conner like 100% of the snaps. They do want to manage him a little bit. Dallas could get you 7 to 8 touches in a game if both of those guys are done, Anthony.
Yeah, and the good thing, if there is a good thing about this, he gets Carolina. We know they're dead last against fantasy running backs. So if you're in a deep league, you're in a really bad spot, and you've made it this far, DJ Dallas could bring a solid floor in Week 16.
So this, if you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. Also, you can check out all of our fantasy football and all of our other sports content and rankings. You get a free 2-day trial. You don't even need a credit card. Go to rotowire.com/Jim. Check out all of our content. If you like it, we'd love if you signed up. If not, just happy you came by and took a look. Let's go to wide receiver, Anthony. So Jalen McMillan in his first 4 games of significant snaps was like a train wreck. He was averaging about 20 yards. That was it. Well, then he plays Las Vegas, 4 for 59 and 2 touchdowns. All right, that was nice, but let's see him do it again. He did. He took care of the Chargers, which I thought the Chargers were, with their way to play their zone and they really limit secondary guys, I thought it was a nasty matchup. 5 for 75 and a touchdown. This offense is no joke. Baker Mayfield is no joke. And right now, neither is Jalen McMillan.
Yeah, I like Jalen McMillan a lot. And I kind of bit into McMillan hard when Evans and Godwin was out. Maybe he's not built to be a number 1 wide receiver, but playing number 2 behind Mike Evans, with Evans taking all that coverage and they can run the ball well. We've seen McMillan now averaging just over 20 PPR points a game in the past 2 games, 3 touchdowns, 13 targets, 9 receptions, just over 100 and something yards. He gets a matchup this week against Dallas. You know Evans is going to be tied up with Diggs, and McMillan is going to have a chance to pop again against the secondary coverage in Dallas. I actually like McMillan a lot this week.
We'll talk about Wan'Dale Robinson of the Giants, but that's only if Drew Lock continues to miss time. When Drew Lock plays, he looks to the outside receivers, and if that doesn't work, he runs. Doesn't look to throw the interior. That Dallas game, Wan'Dale only had 2 targets. Wan'Dale Robinson has 9 games, I believe, with 8 or more targets. So if Drew Lock misses time and you need a PPR scoring floor, Wan'Dale Robinson may be your guy.
Yeah, Wan'Dale, we know he had the great start to the year, cooled off a little bit, but I think if you're in a bind, you're in a PPR league, I think Neighbors might be a little bit banged up, right? Didn't he leave the game yesterday?
Yeah, he came back in, but he's been banged up. Definitely banged up.
You could do a lot worse than Wan'Dale Robinson at this point of the year.
All right, Jalen Coker, Carolina Panthers, comes back from an injury. Second behind Adam Thielen with 6 targets. It was an 83-yard touchdown that made his day. That's not repeatable for the most part. He's not that type of player usually. But regardless, he sees regular targets. Xavier Legette left the game with an injury. I know David Moore came in for more, but Coker should be in line for targets down the stretch.
Yeah, Coker's been a nice player when healthy this year. Again, you said it right. He had that one big play that kind of inflated his stats against Dallas, but he still finished with 21 PPR points. And now you get Arizona. This game could get out of hands. And just like last week, there could be some garbage time for Carolina and Coker.
Adonai Mitchell, Indianapolis Colts, has had a very forgettable season. Even threw a pick 6 yesterday. They threw the ball to him on a trick play. He threw it across the field, and oh my gosh, it was Nick Bonito ran straight through, caught the ball, and didn't even break stride. Anyway, Adonai Mitchell could be a full-time player if Alec Pierce misses time. Your expectations are super low. If you're like in a 16-team league and you need a body because of injuries, Mitchell could see a big play possibility, but the floor is 0, Anthony.
Yeah, and tough matchups too against Tennessee and the Giants, who were sometimes okay against wide receivers outside of yesterday. There's not a ton here. I would be maybe looking at other spots in a waiver wire, but I don't mind Mitchell if you were that much in a bind. But if you are, you're probably not playing at this point of the year.
Yeah, De'Ami Brown of the Washington Commanders. Remember, he took over for Noah Brown, who was put on the injured reserve. De'Ami Brown, I get Brown covering for Brown here, has got 3 for 30 in this game. And I believe that in this role, De'Ami Brown could see between 3 and 7 targets each week. Jaden Daniels been very good. De'Ami Brown's not a ceiling play, but again, he's a potential floor play, Anthony.
Yeah, you get Philadelphia, and Philadelphia's good defense. It could be a little bit leaky against the pass. If there's some volume here, I don't mind the De'Ami Brown. He had 9 targets total in the past 2 weeks and 7 receptions and 65 yards.
And then we'll go to Tim Patrick of the Detroit Lions. So he normally gets about 4 targets a game, but in the last 2 games, it's been 7 and 8. And Jared Goff, quietly, first half of the season, we had a lot of those 20, 25 pass down games. That hasn't been the case. Last month or so, he's throwing 40-plus passes in a lot of games. And Tim Patrick's always on the field. He's their number 3 receiver. That right now, there is enough to go around for everybody. Could that change? Maybe. But here's the point, Anthony. We'll talk about the Lions specifically later. They've had so many injuries. And again, we'll touch on the recent ones in a minute. But their defense can't stop anybody right now. So Tim Patrick could be really sneaky in the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, and Patrick, big-bodied receiver. It seems like Goff is looking towards him in the red zone. 2 of those red zone targets we know converted against Green Bay, and then they use him again this past week against Buffalo. The target share, both games with 7 and 8 targets, and if Goff continues to throw the football the way he is, then there is going to be some target volume for Tim Patrick as we've been seeing. And it seems like he is pulling away as the clear number 3 receiver on this football team. Played a season-high 83% of the snaps yesterday.
So another one, last one, and I think this one's somewhat sneaky. Again, a lot of the people out there know everybody, but Malik Washington, Miami Dolphins, he had been playing about 25 snaps a game. Jalen Waddle goes down with a knee injury, and I don't know how serious it is. He was standing on the sideline. Looks like he had a brace on it. It wasn't an ice pack. So we want to know what's going on with that. We'll find out during the week. But if he misses time, Malik Washington ends up playing 38 snaps, goes 5 for 52 on 6 targets. He hadn't been getting many targets because Waddle, Hill, Jonnu Smith, and all that. But if he moves into the number 2 role in the offense, he could have some scoring floor, Anthony.
Yeah, solid game yesterday. Just over 10 PPR points, 5 for 52 on those 6 targets. Obviously, OBJ's gone. If Waddle does miss time, you're right. There is a sneaky floor here.
There is. Let's go to tight end. Brenton Strange. I was calling people like you, my friends, on Friday saying, pick up Brenton Strange. I didn't necessarily go all in on him against the Jets. The Jets were pretty good defense against the tight end. I thought he was a decent floor play. Well, he was more than that. Brenton Strange caught 11 passes on 12 targets for 73 yards. If you use him in a PPR league, you are gold. Remember, this is the offense where Evan Ingram was always catching 3 to 7 passes, always getting 25 to 40 yards. Brenton Strange subbed in for Ingram earlier in the year, scored touchdowns in 2 of 4 games. Now, he was interfered with. Brenton Strange was in the end zone in yesterday's game because he was going to be open, what could have been a touchdown. But Brenton Strange right now, look, I dumped Kyle Pitts for him in a heartbeat, and I had no question starting him, obviously, when I dumped him. Brenton Strange might be the real deal.
Yeah, Strange had played well in some limited opportunities this season with Evan Ingram out. Now that Ingram's out, Mac Jones looks more comfortable. This is the best version I think we've seen of Mac Jones in a very long time. And there's a lack of pass-catching weapons. I think you're right on Brenton Strange really emerging as possibly the future tight end on this team. I don't know if Evan Ingram goes anywhere, but maybe there's more 2 tight end sets. But Brenton Strange is a good tight end in the NFL.
Yeah, he can play.
And for fantasy this week, get the Raiders. Our third easiest matchup on paper.
Light it up. All right, Stone Smart, Los Angeles Chargers. We liked him this week because he had a cake matchup against the Buccaneers. I was almost disappointed he only went 5 for 50 because, man, Tampa dropped a 40 spot on him. But still, 5 for 50 is fine. We know Justin Herbert will throw to his tight ends. Smart is athletic. Big target in the middle of the field. Anything there?
I like Stone Smart. And again, Disley's the guy, but I don't know. It seems like Stone Smart's a little bit more athletic. If you watch the game, he made a really nice catch in the corner of the sideline. Only 6 targets, but they had averaged 10 yards of reception. Denver's middle of the pack this week. And, tight end position has been a little bit erratic. I don't mind using Stone Smart against Denver's defense.
Yeah, I like the tight end matchup against Denver. When they bring the pressure, again, I always talk about the sight line for a quarterback and getting it out to the middle of the field. Sometimes the most efficient way to deal with pressure, and Stone Smart would give him that. And obviously, Ladd McConkey would be a big part of that as well. By the way, Patrick Surtain, it's supposedly a low ankle sprain and mild. I don't know if that'll impact on a short week for him, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, it's a side note for that. Before we get to our reactions, 2 comments. Eric wants to know about AR or Tua going forward. Oh, man. Yeah, it's pretty ugly. It's closing time at the bar there. Anthony, as bad as he was yesterday, I almost want to say Tua, but, man, that was awful. But Richardson may have been worse. What do you think?
I still think I'm going to lean Tua here. Outside of yesterday, Tua has been a very good fantasy contributor. And that game was a little bit weird anyway. I thought it was going to be a lot more high octane from Miami. That defense just shut him down. They're going to bounce back, or they should have a good chance to bounce back and get San Francisco on paper is a bad matchup, but it's also at home. If it was in San Francisco, maybe I say Anthony Richardson, but because this is a home game in Week 16, I'm more in favor of Tua. Tua at home, we know, plays his best football.
And I certainly can't say Jameis Winston is a better option anymore after yesterday's debacle. And Anthony, I was the idiot that started Jameis over Baker Mayfield yesterday. I thought Mayfield had an awful matchup against the Chargers. I thought that, the Chiefs can't cover anybody, and Winston been throwing 42 times a game. That didn't work out very well. It's one of those lineup decisions I wish I had back.
I mean, I don't think you were wrong, but maybe the Chargers defense, is it starting to feel a little bit overvalued a little bit?
I didn't think the Buccaneers. I thought that there'd be some production. I thought it was a low-scoring game. I thought that'd be a low-scoring game. It clearly wasn't. That's all right. You live with that. It's the pitfalls of fantasy. One more comment, and we're going to talk about the team in a minute. Scott wants to know if the Lions will run more than the pass to slow the games down. They can't stop anybody right now. If they play any decent offense, and they got a tougher schedule to my recollection. So, no, I don't think right now, I don't think they can go all in on the run. They got to keep at least a balance. And they're going to have to outscore teams the rest of the way. That's the way it's going to have to be. And that's how they're getting ready for the playoffs as well. Yeah. So, there's that. Anything on that, Anthony?
Oh, the Lions are keep losing players to injury, especially on defense. So you're right. Like we were just talking about Goff earlier in the Tim Patrick take, how Goff's been throwing more. They're going to have to throw more. And I think this hurts David Montgomery a little bit. And I think this favors Lions pass catchers and Goff, because they might be in shootouts the rest of the way.
I expect they will. I expect they will. We're going to talk about the Lions specifically in a minute, so I'll hold that last thought. Randy has one comment that removed to our reaction part of the show. Anthony rosters Brian Thomas. Should he stay away from Stranger, pick up Stone Smart? Well, Disley's probably back at some point. He could be back in week 17, maybe long shot this week. Look, it's a very narrow target tree. The Jacksonville defense is horrible. They're going to have to throw. I think you use both of them. What do you think, Anthony?
I think you're good to use both of these players. And Mac Jones, again, competent quarterback. It seems like he's laser focused on Brian Thomas and Brenton Strange right now. And the matchup against the Raiders is outstanding for tight ends.
Yeah, there's no question. All right, let's get to reactions. Reaction number 1, Josh Allen adds heavy odds to his MVP case with a 48-42 win at Detroit. But Anthony, before I get to the Josh Allen side of this, the hits keep coming for the Lions. Carlton Davis breaks his jaw. He's out 6 weeks. I'm not a math guy. That's conference championship weekend, probably best case scenario. Aleem McNeil, one of the few remaining front 7 players that was healthy, tears his ACL. I don't know what to do with this anymore. We talked about the Lions a minute ago, but those injuries, and I think this is the lead story, even though Josh Allen, the MVP case, and we're going to get to that in a second, I don't know if this banged up Lions team has to play the Eagles. I don't know how they hold up because they literally may not be able to afford to punt one time. Thoughts on that before we get to the game?
I think you're 100% right because earlier this year, the Lions had a really good run defense. Their run defense has been leaking because of all these injuries. And just bring up Philly. What about, if you got to play Green Bay again with the way Josh Jacobs being featured, or Philly and Saquon? This is a Lions team, and I do think they're capable of playing in these shootouts, right? We just saw it yesterday. But that was a lot of like Buffalo had control of that game. And I think if this Lions team, if they're falling 17-0, 14-3 in the playoffs, I don't know if they'll be able to climb out of these holes. So right now, this defense is a big handicap. Remember, it started with Hutchinson, and it's been player after player after player.
And I'm thinking through, like you said, all right, the Packers, they play the Packers. The Lions play the Packers in the playoffs. That's going to be a shootout because the Packers aren't stopping the Lions. The Lions aren't stopping the Packers. Last team with the ball or whoever makes the big turnover, that's probably that game goes. If they play the Eagles, seriously, Vic Fangio coaching the defense, if it remains healthy, Detroit's going to punt once or twice, or they're going to have a turnover in a punt. They're going to turn the ball over or something's going to happen. They are not going to have – Jared Goff is not going to likely have a flawless game against this version of the Eagles defense. Thoughts on that?
No, and Goff's playing good football right now. Maybe some of the best football of his career, but this Eagles defense, what Fangio is doing with it, it's really hard to stop. They're opportunistic. They're good in the secondary, and they're also good at stopping the run.
Yeah, they are. They're really right now. There are no holes in that defense. They are not like the lockdown Ravens of back in the day. They're not that defense. They're not this lights out team that'll shut you out. But they slow down every part of your game. And if you make any mistakes, you pay for those. So that's the Lions side of the ball. The Lions are now, they have the tiebreaker on the Eagles because it's the conference wins. I want to say they only have one loss in the conference. I think that the loss of Buffalo was a non-conference game. So that didn't really impact them that way, although it's tied. And with a much tougher schedule, if the Lions slip up, they may not be at home, and that could be a problem. They also would like that bye right now. The bye, not that they're getting many people back, but it's a team that could use it. Let's get to the Josh Allen side. Oh, my goodness. Another 4 touchdowns, 2 on the ground, 2 through the air, throws for 362, runs for 68. We talked about this. The Lions, they like to blitz. They like to play man defense. I said the corners are going to turn their backs, which means Allen's going to run 68 yards there. The over was 40 on it. It was a higher number. Blew that away. Realistically, here's the deal, Anthony. And this was the game plan that I talked about they should have run. You could attack the middle of the field on the Lions. Their linebackers cannot cover. You spam the middle of the field. That's what they did. Amari Cooper played about half the snaps. He did not get a single target. Keon Coleman, 2 targets. Well, spam the middle of the field, take advantage of the linebackers. And that's pretty much what they did all day long, Anthony.
Yeah, and if you look at the stat lines, Ty Johnson 5 for 114, getting him into space.
Yep.
Ray Davis caught a few. James Cook, as a receiver and as a runner, got going. I mean, Buffalo did what they wanted to do, and it started early with Josh Allen. Obviously scoring those early touchdowns. And just say, I feel like that set the tone. And again, Detroit is not a team that is built to play from behind.
No, 10 tight end targets, 8 running back targets. You mentioned Ty Johnson was specifically weaponized in this game to get isolated on linebackers. Any team, the game film's out now. If you remember this years ago when the Rams were trying to play for a Super Bowl and they played the Bears and Vic Fangio on a Sunday night game, and Vic Fangio took apart Sean McVay's offense. And I said when that Super Bowl against Bill Belichick game, I said, very simple. My announcement was very simple. I go, Bill Belichick will steal Vic Fangio's game plan, and the Rams will punt all day. And I don't think that game had, 25 points, and it scored by both teams. It's kind of the same deal here. This blueprint is out. The Bills had great success, but if you could do it with Ty Johnson and Dalton Kincaid, think about the teams like the Packers. When the Packers play them in the playoffs, if they play them, think about how they love the middle of the field anyway. This is just going to be great. But anyway, kudos to Josh Allen. Josh Allen continues on the biggest of stages to have the biggest of games. He has been an immense fantasy monster. Beginning of the season, he was okay. Man, and down the stretch, he has been Superman, Anthony.
Yeah, and the MVP case, I feel like, Goff could be in the conversation. I think the only real threat right now is Lamar Jackson, who also had a monster game yesterday as well. But the difference, like everybody's going to talk about Lamar, he did it against the Giants, where Josh Allen came and showed up against the Lions. I get the Lions injuries, but this is still an 11-2 football team versus the Giants, who are first pick in the NFL draft. Big difference in opponents.
Yeah, these reporters that vote on it, they might know about the Lions injuries. They don't really know about the Lions injuries. They aren't that sharp. They're going to see the performance and say he did it on the road against the Lions, and he's going to get full credit for it, and rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Yeah, I feel like that. The Josh Allen holds more weight in yesterday's performance than Lamar's.
Absolutely. I mean, at this point, no longer can we probably say Saquon's an MVP. I think that just kind of went out the window. He had a decent game yesterday, but at a huge stage, I mean, right now, if the Eagles get the 1 seed, and let's say the Bills like crazily lose a game or 2 down the stretch, maybe the seeding would change that a little bit. But if I'm voting right now, I mean, is there any way it's not Josh Allen today?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No. So. And even Saquon, even the Henry conversation, both those running backs cooled off a little bit. Especially
did they ever? Yeah, and I wonder when these teams are getting back to them, because at some point it's going to happen. Is it going to be week 16 or is it going to be the NFL playoffs? And we'll have to find out what that is. A couple comments before we get in here. Let's see here. If we had to redraft today, would Josh Allen be a second rounder? Personally, I don't draft quarterbacks high, but he should probably be a second rounder based on what we've seen. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And he was going depending on, the league format in the second round in some leagues this year. But yeah, absolutely locked and loaded. Josh Allen should be a second round pick next year.
And Scott mentioned about Joe Brady. Look, I called that game plan before at the same time he did. So it was taking the obvious. Give Joe Brady credit because he did it, because a lot of coaches don't do that. But it was the obvious. I was on the show last week. I'm like, get after those linebackers. They can't cover. And that's exact all day long. And then the running game. Like Anthony said earlier, this is a defense you couldn't run on through week 6. Now, wheels up. If you have a decent offensive line, you can run easily on the team. They have nobody left. They're decimated. So crazy. Let's get to reaction number 2. Man, I'm laughing because A.J. Brown gets fed, and he delivers 27-13 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anthony, in the first half of this game, there were 11 drives by both teams. There were only 5 in the second half. Here were Philly's 3 drives. 13 plays, 7 minutes. Field goal. 13 plays, 6.5 minutes. And then, to close the game out, 21 plays, 88 yards, 10.5 minutes, and then they don't score because the clock goes to triple zeros. They didn't need to score. They win by 10. This was taking the Steelers and saying, and this wasn't the purpose, but basically how the Steelers will bully you. This is exactly what happened. But A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith both go over 100 yards, both score. Saquon, not real efficient. 19 for, was it 65 maybe or something like this, off the top of my head. I actually have it right there, 19 for 65. So not much. But look, this was a game the Eagles needed. The Eagles needed this, and I was talking about this last week too. They need to get ready for January. I think you and I talked about this. And the way to get ready is you've got to get that passing game open up, because you are not going to be able to go through January and just say, we're running for 3 games. That's not going to work. You have to do both. And I think this game helps to get them back on track.
Yeah, I liked A.J. Brown a lot this week. You know, because sometimes these narratives, we saw it with Debo, they tried getting him involved early. I thought we were going to get A.J. Brown early. Historically, I know it was a few years ago, normally kills Pittsburgh. And this is also a Steelers defense that probably said, hey, we're not going to let Saquon Barkley beat us. Jalen Hurts, sometimes a little bit of a liability as a passer. Let's let him drop back and beat us, and that's exactly what happened. AJ got his early. We saw Devonta Smith also get involved, and I don't quite know if Saquon had to do a lot. Yes, he had over 20 touches, under 100 yards, but this game was the Eagles saying, we can beat you multiple ways when we have to. And that's what I think makes Philly possibly the most dangerous. Because you bring up Buffalo, like Buffalo might be the best team in football. I said it for weeks now. Philly's the most dangerous team. And what makes them the most dangerous team, look at those 3 drives you just mentioned in the second half. What is Josh Allen doing if he's on the sideline and Philly's eating up the entire half with drives?
He ain't throwing touchdown passes, and he ain't running the ball down your throat.
And I think that's what makes Philly really dangerous in January.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of teams that have a claim for the best team in football. And I know the passing game, like you said, it has been an issue for much of this year. But between the defense, between the running and the ability to pass with those receivers, like you said, dangerous, but they also have a case to say they're the best team in the NFL right now as well. They're a heck of a lot better than the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs always beat you in the Super Bowl. It doesn't really matter. But all that said, they're better than the Ravens. They beat the crap out of the Ravens, and that wasn't even a game, you know. And think about that. They bullied the Ravens, and they bullied the Steelers, the bully division in the NFL, and they kicked the snot out of both of those teams. What does that tell us? That this team is going to go a long way in the NFL playoffs. Look, Steelers, quick thought on the Steelers. No George Pickens, no chance. Because Russell Wilson, we've said it, he could throw the deep ball. He doesn't have much else to his game. And Vic Fangio is going to limit explosives. No George Pickens, no credible receivers. You're throwing Van Jefferson out there, 81% of snaps. Calvin Austin's super fast, but fine. 81% of snaps for him. Mike Williams only plays 35% of snaps. That was probably a mistake, but I don't know if he hasn't learned the playbook. Go deep, not real hard. But they did nothing. They couldn't get the running game going, and then they had no plays in the second half. They had a fumble. Najee lost a fumble. It was a disaster. And the good news for Pittsburgh is they'll play teams that don't have Philadelphia's defense, and hopefully they get George Pickens back.
Yeah, the George Pickens loss, they were able to overcome it against the Browns. Philly's not the Browns. They needed George Pickens yesterday. They needed that big play capability. Calvin Austin's nice. Mike Williams barely done anything outside of that first, I think, catch he's been with the team. Right. George Pickens really opens it up for those other guys. I think the narrative you say all the time, I bring up the Demarcus Robinson example. We're seeing with Jalen McMillan, when they're featured, they're getting shut down. But when they're the ancillary weapon, and I think that's what we're seeing here, where these other guys in Pittsburgh, they're asking to step up against top coverage. They can't do it. And that's completely limiting this Pittsburgh offense.
So right now, the Steelers are a game above the Ravens in the AFC North. Next Saturday, they play the Ravens. So that will be interesting to see. The Steelers won the first one, to my recollection. I don't know why they took care of them. And division-wise, that would put them both at 3-2 if the Ravens are to win, which there's no guarantee they will. Divisional game can go either way. But if that happens, these teams are in a dead heat. Now, the Steelers have the advantage in conference record, so they probably do have the tiebreaker. So the Ravens would probably need to beat them on record, which we'll see how that shakes out. Right now, if the playoffs start and the Steelers held, do they win one game, or is this a one-and-done team?
I think they have a game. If they're healthy, if you're going to tell me George Pickens is healthy, is TJ Watt back? Then yes, I think they win a game. But, if TJ Watt misses time, because he left that game, it looked like a bad injury, then I don't know. I think he's the heartbeat of that whole team, and especially the defense.
Yeah, it's funny. They're like, X-rays are negative. Well, of course they're negative. It's an ankle sprain. It's not going to show up in there anyway. That's for a break. So we're wondering whether it's a high ankle sprain or whatever. Yeah, that's an MRI. So I always find it funny when like the X-rays were negative, and everybody's like, "Oh, great." Well, that doesn't mean anything. I always said I'd rather have a break than a sprain than a high ankle sprain, because the break heals cleaner, and sometimes it heals sometimes faster, depending. Sometimes it does. So if the Steelers were to get in the playoffs right now, they would play Denver in the first round. But another team would be on the table would be like Baltimore. It would probably either Baltimore or Denver. That would be interesting to see either of those teams play the Steelers in the first round of the playoffs. Let's move forward, Anthony. Reaction number 3. The Dolphins offense fails to show up in a 20-12 loss to the Houston Texans. Now, Scott told us earlier that he mentioned Joe Brady's game plan. Well, Mike McDaniel failed his final. This was another one. Houston all year long has been getting crushed on crossing routes. They have poor coverage in the middle of the field. You want to avoid Stingley on the outside when you can. You also want to get the ball quick out on crosser because their pass rush is very good. Teron Arms, the left tackle, is out. This was tailor-made for Mike McDaniel. He had Waddle, who started the game healthy. He hurt his knee later, but he wasn't even in the game plan to land 2 targets. You've got Tyreek Hill. But nope, Mike McDaniel just goes whimsically and just is doing this convoluted game plan, no consistency to it, tacking the outsides where Tua has a pop gun for an arm, can't get the ball there. Joe Brady aced his test with the Bills. Mike McDaniel drew an F. And Tyreek Hill, even though it was garbage time, didn't get anything going. 2 for 36 on 7 targets. This was a disaster for Tua. 3 interceptions. He has to be very highly managed. Otherwise, if he has to make it happen on his own, he cannot do it, Anthony.
Yeah, a lot of credit to obviously what Houston's defense was supposed to do. But this is, you're right, poor game planning. And Devin Achane, right? I've said it all season long. I think Achane is the heartbeat of this offense right now, especially with Tyreek Hill a little bit banged up, getting a little bit older. And Devin Achane, fantasy-wise, had a solid day, but in reality, 12 for 41 as a runner, 7 for 35 as a receiver, 7 for 35. That's 5 yards a catch. You want 5 yards a carry as a runner, but as a receiver, you want that number to be a little bit higher. They took Devin Achane out. Then you had the Waddle injury, and I think this offense just kind of fell apart.
This was a case, again, of not knowing your opponent. Houston all year has been amazing against receiving backs, amazing against them. And to be that uppity to think that Achane was going to break off big play after big play, and that ship has kind of sailed anyway. He has been good, but he's getting high volume, and he has not had big yardage. His 56-yard game came on 8 catches and 9 targets. He has not been lethal in the passing game since early in the season. Again, just horrible game planning, horrible coaching, horrible quarterback play, just completely incomprehensible. A team that had been playing well had a shot at the playoffs. I know they're technically mathematically alive. That one probably put the nail in the coffin. Let's go to the other side. Houston doesn't get a lot more credit here. CJ Stroud throws 2 short touchdowns to Nico Collins, so good for them. But again, Tank Dell, Mario Puig on my show Saturday, XM used the word he's overexposed as an outside starting receiver. It's true. Anytime a team will play too high shell against them, Tank Dell is just a dude. He's got to have single high where he can get over the top without safeties, being in his way. He has to have that. If he doesn't have that, he's just a small dude who's quick. And he's good. He's not an NFL player, but he's not a dominant player. We've seen it this year. And The Dolphins are good run defense. Joe Mixon couldn't get things going. That offensive line for the Texans is terrible. Also, the line is leaky, and the Dolphins sent pressure. That kept him in this game. If you started Nico Collins for fantasy, you had the 2 touchdowns bail you because it was 4 for 17 otherwise. Is this Houston team going anywhere?
I'm going to say no. And I don't know what it is. And I know you mentioned them moving off the fullback, but I feel like CJ Stroud looks like a different quarterback. And maybe it's because the rest of the NFL finally had a full season of film on him. And I always said, like, when he was being overdrafted in fantasy, I said, listen, he's going to be a better NFL quarterback than he is for fantasy. Right now, I think he took a step back in both. Like, maybe it's me. But when you have these talented receivers like Tank Dell and Nico Collins, it seems like only one has a good day. Like I can't remember a game where they both had solid games. And is it a CJ Stroud thing? Is it a play calling thing? But something is off. Even Joe Mixon had quieted down. He was on a tear earlier this season. He's even taken a step back past few games, I feel like.
And I'm not going to keep beating that fullback thing to death, but the reason they were successful last year is the fullback forced a safety to come down, and it was a one high shell they faced all the time because it was the 49ers offense. The Ravens run a style of it. The Dolphins ran a style of it, and it was all the same. Your average depth of target goes through the roof. CJ Stroud was able to handle it, but also in CJ Stroud's defense, his offensive line was much better last year. Same character as a tackle. The blocking has gone down. They have just been a turnstile. 2, tackles that played very well are not. And of course, that's a big part of this as well. And we've seen even with Patrick Mahomes, you can't protect your quarterback. Bad things happen there. So yeah, not looking up for the Texans. They did clinch a division, so they're in the playoffs. We'll see them and write this in pen. We'll see them Saturday afternoon at 4:35 in the first round of the playoffs, where we always have seen the Texans for other than last year, right? Last year, I think we saw them in a night game, but that was about it. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, but
yes, it was. Because I remember where I was during that game. I was going to pick up food, and I was listening to the game, and it was dark.
Yeah, so pencil it back in. They're back in that 4:35 slot. They're one and done, and we'll call that a day. If they get a lucky opponent, they draw the Broncos somehow. Maybe they can put some magic together, but I still don't think they're going to get through the first round of it, the playoffs. All right, reaction number 4. The Packers put a beat down on the Seahawks 30-13. Now, it didn't matter if Geno Smith was in the game or not because he didn't finish. But let's start with the Packers side. Great coach game. And we knew that Jordan Love had a lot of problems with pressure. He's been pressured this year. He has not been a good quarterback, especially the simulated pressures that Mike McDonald, the coach of the Seahawks, likes to run. They came out featuring Josh Jacobs, and I think that was really smart. They came in and they went power running. They screened it to Jacobs. They were setting them up to keep them on their heels, the Seattle Demons, instead of their toes. And then they were able to build passing concepts off that. But Love only threw 27 pass attempts. They were winning, so they weren't going to throw a lot of attempts anyway. He didn't have to have a big game because this team was very well coached. Back to the point of the show. Joe Brady, pitches a shutout. Mike McDaniel, ERA goes up to 20. But we see in this game, Matt LaFleur exactly coaches as needed to be. Thoughts on the Packers, sir?
Yeah, Packers are an up-and-coming team. I get they're in third place. They're a 10-4 team in third place in their own division. And I think we just talked about the health of the Lions. I don't know how much and I like Sam Darnold more than most. I don't know how he's going to be as a playoff quarterback. Like, Packers could very well be a really sneaky team to win the NFC. And a lot of it is Josh Jacobs and the way, because I was sitting there pregame. I almost took Josh Jacobs for his touchdown score. I think I put too much stock into Seattle's defense at home. But the way they came out, it was Jacobs after Jacobs, and he was dominant on that first drive. You're not asking Jordan Love to do a lot. And there was this stat, and I tweeted out a few weeks ago, and I'm sure it continued. When Jordan Love doesn't throw, I think when his attempts are under 29 or 30, Josh Jacobs pops and scores every game, and Jordan Love doesn't turn the ball over, and Green Bay wins. It's a really simple formula.
I'm thinking through playoffs, and I'm thinking about teams, And we'll go quick. We'll both go just a win-loss on this. They play one game. Let's just say neutral field for now because we don't know how this is going to shake out. They play the Rams. Packers-Rams. Who wins?
Green Bay. I'll take Green Bay there.
Yeah, I'd probably take them too. But again, we're making the case because if Stafford has that game and against his team, he can. So that's a fun one. Tampa Bay.
Ooh. Wow.
I know, right? Even the Rams one wasn't as easy as it sounded.
Wow. I actually think it's more difficult because if Green Bay's defense, they can get after Stafford, you can minimize him. Right. I don't know how you stopping Baker Mayfield right now in this offense.
Oh, my God.
I mean, they ran through the NFL. What, the Chargers were a top 2 or 3 defense in scoring?
Yes.
Like a buzzsaw. They were like a buzz, and they're doing this every week. It doesn't matter when Evans was out. They were just, okay, we'll just feature out. Like, they're just buzzsawing through people right now.
Eagles. Packers, Eagles.
Philly.
So now we get down Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay. Are these all 3 teams toss up no matter who plays? Could be any of them any day? Or do you feel different that one of them is like a lesser of the others?
Between who?
Minnesota, Detroit, and Green Bay, the 3 division teams. The Vikings got the defense, the Lions got the offense, and Green Bay is kind of like in the middle.
I think because of the divisional factor, it's a toss-up.
I know. That's the whole thing. These divisional games, they all played each other twice.
It's like we were talking about Pittsburgh earlier. Can they win a playoff game? If they play the Ravens, yeah.
Yes.
And especially if it's going to be in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh wins that game. I think Pittsburgh wins that game at home in the playoffs against both.
Hey, I'll tell you right now, if that's the game, take the points. Divisional game in the playoffs, take the points. Unless it's 0.5, which it usually isn't a pick. All right, real quick on the Seattle side. Look, Sam Howell had to come in. Wow, what a disaster. 5 of 14, 24 yards, throws a pick, of course. And now we know why Washington was so quick to get rid of him. What on Sam Howell? Can they win a game with Sam Howell quarterback?
They couldn't win yesterday with Geno Smith in. So their chances and their odds with Sam Howell, and I'm trying to pull up what they have left. They got Vikings, Bears, and Rams. Yeah, I mean, if Sam Howell's the quarterback, we're looking at the Rams winning that division. I don't even know if they can beat Chicago with Sam Howell.
Not a doctor. I'm not in the house. I would put Geno Smith's chance of playing at less than 20% this week. If he didn't come back in that game, that's where the swelling settles in.
And they get Minnesota this week without. Good luck.
Wow. Yeah, good luck. The defense might be nice, but they're not pitching a shutout. They're not that good. All right, we were going to do another reaction, but we are a little long on time, and I do think this is important. Sauger asked us about the games tonight, so I think we do a couple minutes on this, Anthony. Bears, Vikings, I always start this off with divisional game. That's always where I start this off. First time they played, the Vikings had this game in control at halftime. Garbage time set in the second half. Caleb Williams made it close. I think through 3 touchdown passes top of my head. He had a big game with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, but it wasn't that way early. How do you see this one?
It's I think and this is hard to pick. When I'm kind of speechless, that means I have a difficult picking this game. I think Minnesota covers. You know, there's a part of me that wants to take Chicago with the points because they can move the football on this Minnesota defense, but I just don't trust this Bears team right now. You know, it's that San Francisco game a few weeks ago. I think that just deflated that football team.
You know, and in those that follow me, I am always reluctant to touch these divisional games. I'll often go the over and the under on them. I will go that route, but I very rarely like to delve in this. This game is perfectly set at a -7 line. That line is problematic for me because it's a fairly big number for a divisional game. And the Bears played them. The Bears came back. They went to overtime in that game. It was fluky. I know they had that special teams play and all that. It was fluky. But divisional games, and the number at 44, I don't really like that number either because there are scenarios I could put on both sides of this game. And I would be more inclined to go over 44 in this But if Caleb Williams doesn't have the second half, if they're behind, man, this thing could be like, 27-7.
Yeah.
So I would be inclined to go with the over of the 2. Do you have, again, not that I'm doing that, but I would be inclined. What are your thoughts?
I mean, the past few games, like starting with the last time these two teams played, there was 57. Then they followed up with 43 against the Lions, and then 38-13 last week against the 49ers. So it seems like overs are hitting, and they're probably hitting because Chicago's defense, they're giving up a lot of points, and Caleb is getting that garbage time production. So, yeah, I would probably stay over here.
Now, the next game is the Atlanta-Vegas game. We'll take about 2 minutes on this one and get out of here. But I am interested in this game. No Max Crosby, and their pass rush was not good all year. With no Max Crosby, that means one thing for sure. Kirk Cousins will have all day to throw. Ja'Cory Bennett, the right corner, is an injured reserve. Slot corner Nate Hobbs missed the last month. I don't know if he's coming back or not. He had some limited practices. I don't think it matters. I think this is a game, and the Raiders are good against the run. I think this is a game where Atlanta covers the -6. And I don't like them going to the Raiders. I don't like them being on the road. But regardless, I like them because of Cousins having time. I like their team total. If I go over 26.5 points of them, I get +110. I think that could happen. What are your thoughts on this game? Either spread -6 or over and under, which for the game, again, I like the individual team over and under, Anthony, but the over and under in this game is 44.5.
I probably would lean the under here. I just don't trust Atlanta. I get Cousins going to have time, but I don't know how much I trust this team overall. I do think they come out with the win, but is there going to be enough points scored on both sides? And that's my biggest concern. This could very well be maybe a 24-14 football game in favor of Atlanta.
Yeah, so that's why I like the individual team total here. I do think there's going to be success. I think the Raiders are going to turn the Falcons. They have a good run defense. Pass defense are a little opportunistic. They don't get much pass rush, but I think they could get enough against this Raiders poor quarterback. Do we even know who's starting right now? O'Connell or Ritter? Do we have a final word on that, or we don't yet? Do we?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I tell you what, if there's ever a game for Kyle Pitts, this is the defense where it happens.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I've been burned so often. Oh my gosh, I love the idea.
Before we head out, there was some significant breaking news. This is from Adam Schefter. David Montgomery with an MCL is out indefinitely.
Oh,
and this literally just came through as we were talking about the Falcons game. He's undergoing additional tests on the knee and getting a second opinion, but he could be done for the year.
Deep league, Craig Reynolds could get somewhere. I don't think they want to overexpose Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think that they want to do that. So Craig Reynolds could be getting you 5 to 8 carries in a game. Again, it's deep league. There's not much upside with him at all. But again, if you just need a body, might be that. Anything else on that? It's a great call. I'm finding that.
No, that's crushing. Not only we just talked about the Lions and their Super Bowl chances. This crushes fantasy managers, but I think this is a big time blow to any Super Bowl chance because now you're getting the injuries to the offense.
Man, this is a fun show until you laid that buzzkill on us, Anthony. Thanks for that. Thanks for dropping the dirty bomb on our Monday morning. All right, everybody. For Anthony Cervino, I'm Jim Coventry. Remember to give Anthony a follow on the X at The Real NFL Guru. You can catch me over at Jim Coventry NFL. Anthony, any social media stuff that you want to point out?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have our short videos dropping on the YouTube channel, RotoWire.com, Fantasy Football YouTube, and also on TikTok. So be on the lookout for them.
All right, go get them, everybody. Good luck in the rest of your fantasy week and in your betting. We'll talk to you next time.